The rain poured heavily that night, washing away the dust of the city, but it could not wash away the past. Amara and Ife sat in the back seat of a black SUV, watching the grand mansion in front of them, the same mansion where they had once lived as unwanted children, where they had been called useless, where they had been thrown out like trash. Now they were back, not as beggars, not as victims, but as women of power. Inside that house, their uncle's wife, Madame Eunice, was sipping wine, unaware that her entire world was about to crumble. She was at the center of a scandal that would shake the nation, and the sisters, they held the key to her downfall. Ife turned to Amara, her voice steady. "Are you ready for this?" Amara smiled, her fingers tapping lightly on a thick folder in her lap. "I've been ready my whole life. Tonight, revenge wouldn't be loud. It wouldn't be violent. It would be slow, calculated, and devastating. The game had just begun. The mansion on Victoria Island was supposed to be their home. It had tall gates, marble floors, and chandeliers that sparkled like diamonds. But for Amara and Ife, it was a place of misery, a house where love was absent and kindness was a distant dream. They had arrived at the house when Amara was 10 and Ife was 8. Their parents had died in a car accident, leaving them orphaned. Their only living relatives were Uncle Desmond and his wife, Madame Eunice. Uncle Desmond was a politician, a man with an easy smile and expensive suits, but beneath that polished exterior was a weak man, a man controlled by his wife. Madame Eunice was the real power in the house, and from the very first night, she made it clear. Amara and Ife were not welcome. At first, it was subtle, a missing invitation to a family outing, a new dress bought for her own children, while Amara and Ife wore their old torn clothes, but soon their cruelty became more obvious. "You are eating too much," Madame Eunice snapped one evening when Ife reached for a second piece of meat. "Do you think this is a free-for-all orphanage?" She snatched the meat off Ife's plate and tossed it back into the pot. Ife lowered her head, swallowing her tears. Amara, always the braver one, glared at their hands. "Mommy always gave us 2 pieces each," she said, her voice shaking. Madame Eunice's eyes darkened. In one swift motion, she slapped Amara so hard that the girl fell off her chair. "Your mother is dead," she hissed, "and in my house you will take what I give you." Uncle Desmond sat across the table, shifting uncomfortably in his seat. His eyes darted toward his wife, then back at Amara, who was holding her burning cheek. "Ah, Eunice, maybe I should what? Desmond?" Madame Eunice turned to him, her voice sharp. "Are you going to start questioning me in front of the children?" Uncle Desmond sighed, adjusted his tie, and turned his gaze to his plate. "Let's just eat," he mumbled, and that was how it always went. He was a silent witness, a man who never defended them, never spoke up, never acted. By the time Amara was 12 and Ife was 10, they had become housemates in their own uncle's home. They woke up at dawn to fetch water, sweep the compound, and cook breakfast for Madame Eunice's 3 children, Rita, Samuel, and David. Those ones were treated like royalty, while Amara and Ife were treated like death. "Scrub the floor properly, Rita," the eldest shouted one afternoon as she sat on the couch, scrolling through her phone. Ife's small hands ached from scrubbing, but she didn't dare complain. One day, when Ife mistakenly broke a plate, Madame Eunice made her kneel in the kitchen for hours. "Stupid girl," she spat. "No wonder your mother died early. Foolishness must run in your family." Ife sobbed quietly, her knees burning against the cold tiles. Amara watched from the doorway, fist clenched. She wanted to fight, to scream, to do something, but she had learned the hard way that talking back only made things worse. The night they were thrown out was a night they would never forget. Samuel, Madame Eunice's second son, had stolen some money from his mother's purse. When she discovered it was missing, she didn't even suspect her own son. Instead, she turned to Amara and Ife. "Where is my money?" she roared, shaking with anger. "We don't know," Ife whispered. Madame Eunice's slap came so fast, Ife barely saw it. "Liar! Both of you, pack your things and get out of my house." "But we didn't." "Out!" she screamed. Uncle Desmond stood near the staircase, watching in silence. Amara turned to him, her voice desperate. "Uncle, please, we don't have anywhere to go." Uncle Desmond sighed and looked away. "Just do as she says," he muttered. Amara felt something break inside her. Ife grabbed her sister's hand, her small body trembling. They packed their few belongings into a plastic bag and stepped out into the night. Gate slammed shut behind them. It was raining and they had nowhere to go. As they walked through the dark street, cold and shivering, Amara swore to herself. One day she and Ife would rise. One day they would return, and when that day came, they would make them pay. The night they were thrown out, Amara and Ife had nowhere to go. They walked through the empty streets, the cold rain soaking through their thin clothes. The city was cruel at night. Dark alleys, distant sirens, shadows moving in the corners. Ife shivered. "Amara, where will we sleep?" Amara had no answer. She was 12, barely old enough to take care of herself. Yet she had to protect her little sister. She couldn't let Ife see her fear. "Don't worry, Ife, we will find somewhere." They walked for what felt like hours until they reached an abandoned shop near a market. The metal door was slightly open inside. It smelled of rotten fruit and damp wood, but it was better than the streets. "We will stay here for tonight," Amara whispered. She sat on the hard floor and pulled Ife close, wrapping her arms around her. Ife buried her face in her sister's chest, her small body shaking. "I'm scared, Amara." Amara stroked her hair. "I know, but I'm here." The next morning, hunger clawed at their stomachs. They had not eaten since the previous afternoon. The market was waking up, traders setting up their stalls. The smell of fresh bread and fried akara filled the air, making their hunger worse. Amara saw a woman selling roasted corn. She looked kind, maybe kind enough to help. She approached cautiously. "Auntie, please, my sister and I haven't eaten. Can we have one corn?" The woman frowned. "This is business, not charity. If you don't have money, go away." Amara's face burned with shame. She turned to leave, but Ife's weak voice stopped her. "Amara, I'm so hungry." Desperation took over. Amara saw a half-eaten corn cob on the ground. Death clung to it, but it was food. She picked it up quickly. Ife's eyes widened. "Amara, no." "Just eat," Amara whispered, breaking the corn in half. They chewed slowly, tears mixing with the taste of dust. That night, they slept in the market again. The hunger never went away. The cold never left, but they had each other. One night, as they huddled in a corner, a shadow moved near them. A tall man with dark eyes and a scar on his cheek crouched beside them. "You girls are too young to be out here alone." Amara's heart pounded. "We are fine," she said, quickly pulling Ife close. The man chuckled. "No, you are not, but I can help you. I have a place where young girls like you can stay." Something about his voice made Amara's skin crawl. She had seen other street kids disappear after following strangers like him. She shook her head. We don't need help. The man's smile faded. He reached out, grabbing Ife's wrist. Don't be stubborn. Amara lunged forward, biting his hand as hard as she could. He yelped in pain, loosening his grip. Amara grabbed Ife and ran. They ran through the dark alleys, past old buildings, past piles of garbage, past stray dogs barking at them. They ran until their legs gave out. Ife collapsed, panting. Amara, he almost took me. Amara hugged her tight, whispering, I won't let anyone take you. Never. Days passed. The streets were merciless. They survived by picking leftovers from restaurants, drinking from public taps, and sleeping under bridges. Then, one morning, fate intervened. As they sat by the roadside, a woman in a green kaftan approached. She had a kind face, but Tamara had learned not to trust kindness. You children have been sitting here for days, the woman said gently. Where are your parents? Amara stiffened. They are gone. The woman's eyes filled with sadness. Come with me. I run a shelter for children like you. You don't have to suffer anymore. Amara hesitated. Could they trust her? Ife squeezed her hand. Please, Amara, I'm so tired. Amara looked into the woman's eyes. There was no darkness, no hidden intention, only concern. She exhaled. Okay, we will come. As they walked away from the streets that had nearly swallowed them, Amara held her sister's hand tightly. For the first time in months, hope flickered in their hearts. The woman's name was Madame Roslyn. She ran a shelter for children. At least that was what she called it. When she brought Amara and Ife into her home, it felt like a miracle. The house was big but old, with high ceilings and faded walls. Other children lived there, about 15 of them, all looking well fed and dressed better than Amara and Ife had ever been. You are safe now, Madame Roslyn told them, smiling warmly. No more sleeping on the streets. For the first time in months, they ate properly cooked food. They slept on beds instead of cold concrete. Ife, exhausted from their suffering, trusted Roslyn immediately. But Amara was not so sure. Something about the way the other children never looked too happy made her uneasy. At first, life seemed better. They were given clothes, food, and a place to stay. Madame Roslyn acted like a mother, calling them her girls and patting their heads like they were special. The small signs of trouble began to appear. One night, a girl named Ada whispered to them while they were washing plates in the kitchen. Be careful, she warned, glancing at the door. Madame Roslyn is not who you think she is. What do you mean? Ife asked, frowning. Ada hesitated, then whispered. Some of the children that come here, they never leave. Amara's blood ran cold. Before she could ask more, they heard footsteps. Ada quickly grabbed a plate, pretending to be busy. Something was wrong in this house. One afternoon, Madame Roslyn called Amara and Ife into her office. The room smelled of expensive perfume, and a fake warm smile stretched across her face. You two are growing into fine young girls, she said, folding her hands on her desk. And I take care of you, don't I? Yes, ma, Ife answered quickly. Amara remained silent. Roslyn sighed. Well, my dear girls, it's time for you to start repaying me. Amara frowned. Ow! Madame Roslyn leaned forward, her eyes turning cold. Some of my friends are wealthy men. They like young girls. You just have to keep them company when they visit. Silence. Ife's breath caught in her throat. You mean? Don't act so innocent, Roslyn snapped, dropping her fake kindness. I saved you from the streets. You owe me. Amara stood up, her fist clenched. We won't do it. Rosalind's eyes darkened. Then you can leave. Go back to starving and sleeping in the gutters. Ife trembled. Amara grabbed her sister's hand and pulled her towards the door. Wait, Rosalind said suddenly. They paused. She smirked. You have nowhere to go, do you? Amara's silence gave her the answer she needed. Rosalind leaned back in her chair, victorious. Then stay and do as I say. Amara turned around sharply. We would rather die on the street than do this for you. Rosalind's fake smile vanished completely. Fine, she said coldly. If you won't obey, you will suffer in other ways. The next few weeks were hell. Amara and Ife were given less food, sometimes just water and dry bread, while other children wore proper clothes. They were made to wear rags. Their chores doubled. Since you don't want to be useful, Rosalind sneered one evening, you can clean every inch of this house until your hands bleed. Amara and Ife scrubbed floors until their fingers cracked and bled. They washed plates until their backs ached, but they never gave in. At night, Ife cried, Amara, what will we do? Amara wiped her sister's tears. We will wait, and when the time is right, we will make her regret this. They just didn't know how yet. Then something happened. Madame Rosalind had a big problem. Her business was falling apart. A rival shelter owner had accused her of fraud, and government officials were investigating her. One night, she stormed into the girls' room. You, she pointed at Amara. You can read well, right? Amara frowned. Yes. Rosalind threw a pile of papers at her. Fix this. Write me a response that will clear my name. Make it convincing. Amara froze. She had learned to write well from her parents before they died. But why should she help this woman? Rosalind glared at her. Do you want to eat tonight or not? Amara hated how she had to think about it. She glanced at Ife, who was staring at her with worried eyes. Then she looked back at Rosalind and said, Fine. But she had a plan. Amara wrote the response so well that the government started believing Rosalind's lies. The investigation stalled and her business was saved. Rosalind was shocked. You are actually intelligent, she muttered. That was the beginning of something new. She made Amara draft letters, respond to official emails, and even rewrite contracts for her dirty deals. And Ife? She had always been good at talking to people. Soon, Rosalind made her convince donors to send money, using her innocent voice to manipulate them. They had become useful to her, and everything changed. At first, Rosalind still acted cruel, still withheld food when they annoyed her. But then, something shifted. She started realizing that she needed them. Amara's writing kept her business alive. Ife's sweet words brought in more donors. One evening, Rosalind bought them new clothes. You girls must look presentable, she said stiffly. Amara and Ife exchanged glances. Later that night, Ife whispered, She's afraid to lose us. Amara smirked. Exactly. They had turned the tables, and this was just the beginning. Madame Rosalind's eyes darkened as she watched Amara and Ife work. She had underestimated them. At first, they were just street rats, disposable, useless. Now, she found herself depending on them, and she hated it. But if she lost them, she would lose everything. Still, something about Amara's silent confidence unsettled her. The girl was dangerous. And Madame Rosalind didn't like danger. One evening, thick tension filled the house. Amara was writing a legal defense for Rosalind when she paused. Something about the document didn't add up. She read carefully. Then her heart stopped. Madame Rosalind wasn't just running a fraudulent orphanage. She was involved in something much darker. Amara, Ife whispered. What's wrong? Amara shut the document quickly. Nothing. But it wasn't nothing. It was huge. For the first time, Amara held real power over Roslyn. But if Roslyn ever found out she knew the truth, she wouldn't let them walk away alive. Madame Roslyn noticed the shift immediately. Amara was suddenly too quiet, too careful. She kept her notes hidden, avoided direct eye contact, and never left Ife alone. Roslyn's instinct screamed, she knows something. One night, she called her most trusted guard. Watch them closely. If they try anything, undo it. Amara's mind raced. She had proof. If she could get it to the right person, Roslyn would be finished. But Roslyn was watching them too closely. Their every move was monitored. Time was running out if they didn't act soon. They would never leave that house alive. Amara waited for the perfect moment. One night, while the guards were drinking in the backyard, she whispered to Ife, "Tonight, we are leaving." Ife's eyes widened. "How?" Amara showed her a hidden USB drive. "I copied everything into this." But Roslyn, Amara's grip tightened. "That's why we have to be fast." Heart pounding, she grabbed Ife's hand. They slipped out of their room, past the dark hallway, past Roslyn's office. They were almost at the door when a deep voice echoed behind them. "Going somewhere?" The moment Madame Roslyn's cold voice echoed behind them, Amara and Ife froze. Slowly, they turned around. Roslyn stood in the dimly lit hallway, her arms crossed. Behind her, two of her strongest guards blocked the way. Amara gripped the USB in her palm, sweat forming on her forehead. "I should have known you would try something like this," Roslyn said, her voice calm, almost amused. "You are smart, but not smart enough." She stepped closer. "Now, hand it over." Amara lifted her chin. "No." Roslyn's smile vanished. "Excuse me?" "You had me," Amara said, her voice steady. "If you lay a finger on us, I swear this information will get out. You will be finished." Roslyn's nostrils flared. "You think you can threaten me, little girl?" she hissed. Amara didn't flinch. "I don't think. I know." For the first time, Roslyn hesitated. She wasn't used to being defied, but there was something different about Amara now, something dangerous. Roslyn took a slow step forward. "Let me tell you how this will go, dear child," she said in a low, threatening voice. "You will give me that USB? You will forget everything you saw, and in return, I will let you and your sister walk out of here unarmed." Ife swallowed hard, but Amara didn't blink. She smirked. "Lies." Roslyn's fingers twitched. "What did you say?" "If we give you this," Amara said, holding up the USB, "you will kill us." The silence in the hallway was thick. Roslyn's jaw tightened. "You have no proof of that." Amara leaned in slightly, eyes burning. "You and I both know I don't need proof. I just need people to believe it." Roslyn's eye twitched. She knew Amara was right. For the first time in her entire life, she had lost control, and she hated it. Roslyn exhaled sharply, pacing. Then, suddenly, she turned to them. "Fine," she said, her voice clipped. "What do you want?" Ife's eyes widened slightly, but Amara had been waiting for this moment. "Two things," Amara said. Roslyn narrowed her eyes. "Speak." "First, you will fund our education completely," Amara said. "You will pay for the best schools, no questions asked." Roslyn's lips pressed into a thin line. "Second," Amara continued, her voice firm, "you will transfer 10 million naira into our account tonight." Roslyn's head snapped up. "Are you insane?" she barked. "You think I'm that foolish?" Amara smiled slightly. "I think you are desperate." A tense silence followed. Then Roslyn turned to her guards. "Bring me my laptop." Within the hour, Roslyn made the transfer and arranged their school admissions. Amara watched the account balance change and nodded. pleasure doing business with you." Rosalind's eyes burned with fury. "If you ever speak of this—" "We won't," Amara said coolly. "Unless, of course, you try to come after us." With that, Amara grabbed the first hand and they walked out of the mansion. Rosalind didn't stop them. She couldn't, because for the first time she had been outplayed. They had money, but no home. At first, they lived on the streets, using their money sparingly. They didn't trust anyone. Nights were cold, food was scarce. Ife fell sick twice. Amara, despite having money, felt helpless, but she refused to let despair win. Within weeks, they rented a small apartment, just one room, but it was theirs. For the first time in years, they had a door they could knock. Amara quickly took full responsibility. She handled the finances, enrolled them in school, and made sure Ife ate before she did. When Ife wanted new shoes, Amara said, "Not yet, maybe next time." When Ife struggled with homework, Amara stayed up late, helping her, even though she was exhausted. When Ife cried at night, missing their parents, Amara held her close and whispered, "We will be fine, I promise." She played mother, father, protector, and sister, and Ife never forgot it. At school, they met Professor Chinwe, a brilliant woman who noticed their intelligence and struggles. She was tough but kind, pushing them to be better, think bigger, and work harder. "You are not victims," she told them one day. "You are survivors. Act like it." Her words stuck with them. Years passed. Amara and Ife didn't just survive, they thrived. They studied harder than anyone else. They stayed out of trouble. They took every opportunity that came their way. And when graduation day came, they stood at the very top of their class with excellent results, scholarships, and a hunger for justice. They were ready. Ready to step into a bigger world, and ready for revenge. Amara's name made headlines before she even stepped into a courtroom. She was known as the fierce young lawyer who fearlessly challenged corrupt officials and won impossible cases. Ife, on the other hand, had become a renowned journalist, uncovering scandals that rocked the entire nation. Her investigative reports sent crooked business tycoons and politicians into hiding. But not everyone was pleased. Society had a question for them. "Why are you women so ambitious?" "You should be grateful," a senior lawyer once told Amara. "A woman has no business fighting this hard. You should get married," a male journalist told Ife. "A woman's greatest achievement is a home, not headlines." Even their extended family whispered. They should learn humility. A woman who rises too high will fall hard. But Amara and Ife had spent their entire lives fighting to survive. Did they care what people thought? Not one bit. One day, Ife stumbled upon a disturbing investigation. A powerful child trafficking ring was operating under the disguise of charity homes. It was a massive case, and it involved some of the most powerful people in the country. She dug deeper and froze when she saw a familiar name. Madame Roslin. Madame Roslin was still in business, bigger and more powerful than ever. And now, Amara and Ife had the power to bring her down. They began preparing their case. If Ife could expose the truth and Amara could legally destroy Roslin's operations, they could end her reign for good. But Roslin was watching, and she wasn't about to let them win. A few weeks later, Amara received an anonymous email. She clicked on the attachment, and her heart pounded. It was a bank statement, the record of the money Roslin had sent them years ago. Below it was a simple message. "If you don't drop your investigation, this transaction goes public. Let's see how the world reacts when they learn that the great Amara and Ife were once on my payroll." Roslyn was trying to twist the truth. If the media believed they had been founded by a criminal, their reputations would be ruined, and Roslyn knew it. Amara leaned back in her chair, reading the blackmail message again. Ife, standing behind her, clenched her fist. She thinks she has us. She doesn't, Amara murmured. She is desperate. But if this gets out, Ife's voice trailed off. Amara's gaze darkened. Then we don't let it. They have spent years taking down dangerous people, and Roslyn was no different. They just had to play smarter. Amara sent a short reply. Let's talk in person. Within an hour, Roslyn sent a location, a private lounge in a 5-star hotel, a place where powerful criminals made deals in the shadows. Ife frowned. This is risky. Amara nodded. I know, but if we play this right, we will get everything we need. The moment they arrived, Roslyn was already waiting. Her expensive jewelry glittering under the low lights. She smiled as they sat. Smart girls, you know when to surrender. Amara forced a polite smile. We know when to negotiate. Roslyn chuckled. Good, because if this story gets out, you will lose everything. But if you cooperate, she leaned in. You will get far more than what I gave you before. Ife spoke carefully. What exactly do you want from us? Roslyn's eyes gleamed. Stop digging. Kill the investigation. And in return, I will make sure you rise higher than you ever imagined. She slid 2 blank checks across the table. Name your price. Ife hesitated, but Amara picked up a pen, swirling it between her fingers. That's tempting, Amara said, watching Roslyn's reaction. But how do we know you won't turn on us later? Roslyn laughed softly. Oh, darling, if I wanted you destroyed, I would have done it already. She leaned forward. We can work together, Amara. You are brilliant. You can use your legal skills to protect people like me. And Ife, imagine the kind of stories you could tell if you had access to my world. Amara held Roslyn's gaze. You are offering us power. Roslyn smiled. I'm offering you a seat at the real table. They pretended to consider it. Over the next few weeks, they acted as if they were backing off, while secretly gathering more evidence than ever before. Roslyn, believing she had won, let them get too close to her operations. She didn't know she had just given them the perfect ammunition. Soon, Amara and Ife would strike, and this time there would be no escape for Madame Roslyn. Amara and Ife had spent weeks pretending to be on Roslyn's side. They had smiled at her lavish parties, nodded through her bragging about untouchability, and even accepted her business offers while secretly collecting every shred of evidence. And now it was time. Ife scheduled a live investigative broadcast, promising an explosive revelation about corruption at the highest level. Amara, meanwhile, prepared a legal counter-attack, ensuring Roslyn couldn't silence them. They left no loophole, no escape. Roslyn had no idea what was coming. The night of the broadcast, people across the country glued themselves to their screens. Ife, standing before the cameras, began. For years, the people behind child trafficking and illegal businesses have walked free. Today, that ends. She unveiled video clips, documents, and secret recordings, all linking Roslyn to a massive criminal network. The final blow, a clip of Roslyn herself laughing, saying, "No law can touch me. I own the law." The internet exploded. People raged. Protesters flooded the streets. Hashtags trended. Madame Roslyn's empire crumbled in real time. Within hours, authorities stormed her mansion. Her powerful allies, they abandoned her. Her reputation destroyed. By morning, Madame Roslyn was arrested. The sisters watched the news, a quiet satisfaction between them. They hadn't just survived Roslyn, they had ended her reign for good, and in doing so, they had proven one thing: no one decides a woman's limits but herself. 6 months later, the world had changed for Amara and Ife. Rosalind's trial was the biggest in the country's history, and thanks to their evidence, she was convicted along with several powerful figures. But the sisters had moved on to bigger things. Amara stood before a packed courtroom, facing down a corrupt governor accused of embezzling billions. The opposing lawyers whispered, "That's the woman who took down Madame Rosalind." Amara simply smiled. She had become the most feared lawyer in the country, known for never backing down, and today she was about to win another impossible case. Meanwhile, Ife stood on a global stage, accepting an award for her fearless journalism. She had been offered international deals, but she chose to stay and expose the truths that no one else dared to touch. Tonight, she spoke directly to young girls watching at home. Never let anyone tell you where you belong. You decide your own story. That night, Amara and Ife sat on the balcony of their penthouse apartment, watching the city lights. They had fought battles no one should have to fight. They had been abandoned, mistreated, blackmailed, and threatened, but they had risen together. "Are you happy?" Ife asked, sipping her tea. Amara smirked. "We just ruined another powerful criminal's career. What do you think?" Ife laughed. "And to think we were once just two scared girls trying to survive." Amara nodded, her eyes filled with pride. "We are not survivors anymore, Ife. We are the storm."